everyone, welcome to Danny Chats. This is episode 4 and I'm joined today by Virginia. She's in America. Whereabouts are you, Virginia?
I am in beautiful Oregon on the West Coast.
And what's the time there?
It is about 9 a.m. here.
Yeah, it's like just gone 5 here. I think you're the biggest time difference I've had with anyone so far.
Just about opposite sides almost.
Yeah, it's quite crazy, the time difference between people in America, to be honest.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, my cat has joined us as promised.
Hello.
And my grandparents live in Hawaii, so there's a 3-hour time difference just between us and them. And and then we have family in New York, 6-hour time difference just between them alone.
That's mad, such a big country. Okay, so you were diagnosed in your teenage years with Wilson's disease, yeah?
Yeah, I was diagnosed at 16, and I have very short experience with diagnosis. I was diagnosed the day I was put on the liver transplant list.
Wow.
So I was it was the summer before my senior year of high school, and I had just not really been feeling well. Very lethargic, very much like you were when you were at your about 13, 14 years old age. Something seemed wrong, but everyone just thought I was a teenager.
Yeah.
Mono had been going around our school, and so my doctor actually diagnosed me with mono without even doing a test.
What's mono?
Mononucleosis. It's a very common disease in the United States among teenagers. I'm not sure if it's a virus or not. Don't quote me on that, because it hasn't been a reference in my life for at least 10 years. But it's just a very common disease that goes around schools. Kids get it, they're sick for a few weeks and go back. And because it had been so common at my school, my doctor just said, I'm certain that's what you have. You're going to be sick for a while and you'll get better. And so I was sick just the whole summer before my senior year of high school. And actually the day I had my senior photos taken, I had to cut it short. I felt so tired and so sick, and my mom took me home, and I got severe stomach pain that day. I couldn't deal with the pain. By the next morning, we went to the emergency room that was just down the street from our house, and I didn't go home until I had a new liver. So
very, very, very similar to mine in the fact that I was ill, and then it was just a severe pain in the stomach that led me to go into hospital. And again, they wanted to give me a liver transplant at the time, but they also told me that I could try the medication, and I suppose I wasn't too far gone, and I wanted to try it, so that worked for quite a while.
That's I didn't. So I must have had such a scarred liver that medication wasn't going to be an option to help me. And to let you know, I mean, I was walking, talking just like this, and within 24 hours, I couldn't walk. I couldn't talk normally. I was swollen. I went into hospital at about 140 pounds, and a week later I was 185 just from water retention. But I was really, really lucky that the only hospital in Oregon that does transplants is like 20 minutes from our house. Portland, Oregon. And so I was after going to a children's hospital first, because I was technically still a child. At first they just thought my gallbladder had burst. And were certain my gallbladder had burst. And they go in to do the laparoscopy to take out the gallbladder. And my mom said the surgery was supposed to take like 2 hours. They came out 25 minutes later. And she was like, and they're like, okay, so sit down. And for me, literally from that day, that was only 24 hours after I'd gotten to the hospital, it's all kind of blurry.
I can imagine.
I was so sick so fast. I turned yellow in that 24 hours. I was bright yellow. Kaiser Fleischer rings was actually what happened. So at the first hospital, after MRI, ultrasound, doctor walks in, shines a flashlight, and he's like, oh, no, Kaiser Fleischer rings. And me and my mom are like,
what?
What are those? And of course now the telltale sign of Wilson's disease. And when I was at OHSU, because that's a teaching hospital, I swear every single doctor and every single nurse and every student there came by my room to look at my eyes and see the Wilson's disease patient.
You will be. You'll be like something that they've only ever seen in a textbook. I was talking to a guy yesterday, and he was saying the funny thing about his diagnosis was he even brought Wilson's disease up to his doctor, and he said, "Could it be Wilson's disease?" And his doctor said, "Don't be ridiculous. I've never met anyone with that."
That's wow. That's
Yeah.
But and that is, I was on a webinar a few months ago and talking to a neurologist out of UCLA. And one thing that he mentioned that stuck with me is the fact that they know based on how many people should have Wilson's disease and the fact that so many less are diagnosed, that's how many undiagnosed people there are out there with Wilson's disease. And hopefully things like this can get more of the word out, symptoms that people can recognize. And so for me, I didn't have any telltale symptoms of liver failure or Wilson's disease. I was a straight A student. I had none of the neurological symptoms. I was very active in my school. I did after school curricular activities. So when we saw it, we were like, what? How can I possibly have this?
And that didn't decrease in like over a small time. That was, I mean, over a long time. That was just literally over a few days. You went.
It literally was, and I'll have to send you my senior photo so you can see like the photo that was the day before I went into liver failure. You wouldn't know. And in fact, what we banned people from taking any photos of me in the hospital because it was very apparent very quickly that I was probably not going to get a liver. Yeah. And they wanted that to be the last photo that was ever taken of me because it's a really cute photo. But and so just more on what happened to me is I was transferred to a hospital. Then OHSU took me in their adult transplant ward at 16 years old because I was a week from my 17th birthday. And they didn't think I would survive a flight to California at that point. I didn't have a choice, really. Yeah. And so I was at OHSU in the ICU, and I was there 11 days. And so this was August 30th to like September 10th. And then I don't remember the last 2 days. I was basically comatose. I do know that my parents were told to get ready to say goodbye. Yeah. We didn't think the liver was coming. And the fact that I got a liver was like less than a 5% probability. And then I woke up from a liver transplant, and it was like I had, like today, I have every memory since then. I was only in the hospital for 6 days for recovery.
That's good.
I went back to school, I think 3 weeks later.
Wow.
All I cared about was going back to my senior year of high school. Yeah. And getting back to doing theater and debate and drama and going to football games. And I had a couple episodes of minor rejection afterwards, but only just like overnight stays in the hospital. And really, it's just been pushing boundaries ever since. Doctors had no idea what I was going to be capable of. Yeah. They said, we don't college, maybe. And I graduated with a bachelor's degree. So
yeah, you sound very determined anyway. So I think, you would have done well no matter what the case was. Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. So when you were diagnosed at school, did you find that people at your school said anything or treated you different? Was there?
Yeah. So, I mean, a big part of it is I feel so, I know I have Wilson's disease. I had Wilson's disease, but I was never treated for Wilson's disease. So I very much feel like a transplant patient.
Yeah.
Separate to a Wilson's disease patient because, and this is actually an interesting thing that you mentioned in your story that triggered me was the prawns. I had shrimp like 2 weeks before I went into that, and it was the most sickening thing I had ever eaten. And so thinking back on fish trigger, but for me, actually a rumor went around my school that I had died. And so, so I can laugh about that now. I enjoy that laugh now, but a lot of people were like, "Oh my God," when they saw me.
Yeah, you've risen from the dead.
I've risen from the dead. I am bionic. And I think at first, well, and this is interesting because of quarantine right now, I had to wear a mask for 2 months.
Yeah, that was suggested with me, but I mean, with me, I wasn't at school, I was off work, so I wasn't really mixing with too many people, but I can imagine with you at school, that's what they said. Did you wear a mask?
I did. I had to wear a mask to school, and I didn't go back for 6 weeks. And I think by the time I was back at school full time, I didn't have to wear one, but I had to wear one when I went to the store, to the hospital, anywhere for that 6 weeks. And so when quarantine started, I had a little bit of PTSD and depression trigger up, and remembering what that was like to feel so different. And I'll never forget walking through the grocery store with a mask on, and my dad like looking at people like, it's you, not her. You can kill her. She's fine. And I think for the most part, really, people were just, after a few months, there was no difference. And once I got to college, I had to tell people I have a liver transplant. You wouldn't know. You don't know me. I seem absolutely just like a higher activity, very hyper normal human being that drinks a lot of coffee. But that's one thing that, in a way, when we talk about invisible illness, Wilson's disease and transplant patients can feel like that, especially when with Wilson's disease, you know this, we bounce back to a very healthy person. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to contemplate feeling like you're sick, because I don't feel like I'm sick, but I know that if I can't just go outside right now and go to the store. I can't just leave my house right now and can't leave until they really find a cure for the virus.
That's one of my thoughts on that. We went out for a walk this morning, and I walked past a friend's house, and she was in the garden with her husband, and I said hello, and she just jumped back and she went, "You're not even supposed to be near us." I wasn't even near them. I was like, I don't know, more than 3 or 4 meters. Like, their garden's a long garden. I was walking past it. Yeah, she was just like, "Get away, get away."
Yeah, I haven't been able to see my family. I've driven past their house to drop off bread and deliver that, and I've only been able to wave at my niece through the window, and it's been hard being away from her. She's 20 months old, and so she's at critical age of learning, and she recognizes my husband as her uncle.
Nice.
And I don't know that she recognizes me. Me. So I'm ready to get back to normal life with all this. I know everybody else in the world is too. But I think especially for high risk people that feel very much like we're in this very special bubble. And more on, I kind of questions for you. Do you feel like you have any Wilson's disease side effects post-transplant?
Not now, no, not at all. I feel a million times better. I didn't realise how ill I was, or what my full potential could have been or could be. So yeah, I haven't felt like this in years. To be honest, it's been really weird. It's like having to get to know a new person. In some ways, you know, but yeah. So yeah, I definitely don't have any of the Wilsons. There's no tiredness. I didn't even realise I was jaundiced. I must have been jaundiced throughout this whole period of having it, because it wasn't until after I had the operation that all my friends said to me, like, you're not yellow anymore. And I was like, I didn't realise I was anyway, but no one ever said it to me. Do you know what I mean? It's not like your friends are just like, I think they just thought that, one friend just said, I thought you was just naturally that colour. I just thought that was you.
I think for me, the problem was being 16 years old, and it was the summer before my senior year. I had been spray tanning all summer. And so with all that fake chemical, I mean, I didn't tan, I just spray tanned. And so all that chemical buildup on my skin, that's why like 2 days after I'd been in hospital and I'd taken a good deep shower, it was like, bam, she's yellow Oompa Loompa. Yeah. I was very, very jaundiced, and to the point where my eyes were yellow, my nails were yellow, my skin was yellow. Yeah. And it was so sudden. Again, my stomach swelled so suddenly. I retained like 45 pounds in a week of water, and didn't have memories, and it was really quite amazing how fast the recovery is. And you make the point. I feel like from the day of my transplant, I've been a different person.
Yeah, definitely.
Through that day, but for me, it's a weird experience not knowing that I had Wilson's disease that whole time. And is anyone in your family a carrier?
Not as far as we know, no, not from the people that have been tested. Well, obviously my parents were carriers, and their 2 genes mixed with me, but as far as we know, no one else in my family's had it or anything. My brothers and sisters have been checked, they don't have anything. Yeah, I was just I suppose you could say the unlucky one.
Yeah, that's exactly. Both of my parents had it recessive, although I've been very much doing, I had my DNA tested through like Ancestry as well,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
I'm trying to find anybody in history in my family line that maybe had it.
yeah,
And passed it on not knowing, because the only girl that I've ever met in Oregon that had Wilson's disease as well, it actually was passed on to her from her dad. He was misdiagnosed with liver cancer and
really.
then died after giving birth, and she had been born, and then she was they both had Wilson's disease.
Yeah,
And then I got it recessive from both of my parents. My brother is only my half brother, so he
yeah,
genetically
same. That's the
was
same
like,
with mine. Yeah, I think
um,
it's hard to trace someone in your family that may have had it because even now people are still getting misdiagnosis,
yeah.
and I mean you can imagine sort of 20, 30, maybe even 50 years ago, people would in your family might have had it, but they could have just been put down as having some other sort of illness.
Alcoholics,
Yeah, yeah,
and for me, that's, you talk about people treating you different. I'll never forget, I was a rambunctious high school teenager. I drank underage. I'm going to be very honest about
yeah,
that. And when I had the liver transplant, there was a girl that came up to me and said, "Oh my God, did you drink enough to kill your liver?" And thought that you could do that in like one party.
yeah. That's a
So,
good party.
like, yeah, that one party that you saw me ever have that one Smirnoff at. And so that was kind of a good lesson for people around me to learn. And I've also, when I was in college, I did a lot of volunteering to help kind of get kids awareness on how to be organ donors, and just how easy of a decision that is to make, and the impact that can make to somebody else and their life. And I think about, I went back to the hospital like a few months after my transplant, and I ran into the doctors that did my transplant, and just that seeing their smiles, knowing the impact they make on our lives, and the decision to donate, and what organ donation does for some people, and just how sick we truly were, and not even knowing it until
Till now,
you're
yeah.
literally on your deathbed. But yeah, and I, Wilson's disease patients, it's crazy. I hear about some people getting diagnosed as young as 3-4 years old. And I wonder, how do they get those diagnoses so young?
Yeah, I think there could be a whole mix of things. It could be that they have had symptoms, but it's very unlikely, maybe because they're so young. They could have quite a few people I know that I've spoken to have just been going for other medical tests, and it's shown up that they've had an irregularity in the liver, so then more tests have been done. You're lucky to get that diagnosis, though, really. Because even
Yeah.
people, like I said, the medication helped me, and my liver was really damaged. People that don't have that much damage, if they get on the medication, then that could be them sorted for life. Then.
Yeah, and that's it's very interesting how, I wonder about diet and how that affects the damage to the liver. So I know I grew up here on Oregon and the coast. My dad's a fisherman. I
Yeah,
grew up eating salmon, a lot of salmon, a lot of local nuts and vegetables and fruit, which is all very high in copper.
yeah,
So I wonder how that affected the scarring. And I also, dark chocolate, like there's at least 6 bags of it in my pantry right now. Uh, and that's part of where I feel that kind of misconnection from Wilson's disease is, I've never had that experience of having to limit my diet other than grapefruit. I don't know if you're on tacrolimus. Are you?
I'm on Prograf or
Yeah.
Abigraph, sorry. Yeah, grapefruit. We got told fresh lime, I think. There was a
Oh,
couple of things. Because also, I mean, I got told I couldn't have my chicken's eggs because they hadn't been treated for salmonella.
I have been told that as well, because they haven't been pasteurized.
Yeah,
Um, I, but I was told as long as I cook them, I'm okay.
yeah, I would have thought that would be okay, to be
Yeah,
fair.
so like I wouldn't do a meringue with probably my chicken's eggs, because they're baked at such a low temperature.
Yeah.
Wouldn't necessarily pasteurize them, and actually that's funny, because I'm from Oregon. Here we have Tillamook Cheese Factory, which is the greatest cheese in the world. I'll have to figure out how to send you some. And they have this thing called cheese curds, and my dad actually called like the CEO of the company to find out if they were pasteurized, because I had been eating them post transplant. and they're flash pasteurized, so I was okay. But yeah, that's actually one thing in baking I have to be aware of, because there's a lot of recipes that egg white is undercooked or dried out, and I'm not a big fan of meringue anyway, so that's good. But that's interesting, and I actually was told I wasn't allowed to have pet birds, because
I was warned. I was warned about the chickens. I think it's just, if you, I mean, to be honest, if you're going to go in and clean their coop out, wear a mask. Obviously, you know, do the hand sanitizer stuff. I think it's just more about just trying to be safe. I mean, I did have a lady contact me, and she did get ill from her chickens after her transplant. So it's just, like I say, it's just taking precautions. Like I said, she said she was cleaning out her coop. She wasn't necessarily following all the procedures, maybe. So
that's exactly what they said. Is it's about being safe, and you know, you can live a completely normal and like, I mean, I've graduated college, I've gotten married, I've traveled several places, very fun. It's amazing all the things I've been managed to do with a liver transplant that hasn't held me back in any way, shape, or form. And one thing that I should bring up for anybody that's watching this, and I do have some side effects that I don't know that they're transplant related. I have a lot of issues with my stomach. I have a lot of issues with just food adversity, things that make me sick. We don't know if it's related to the transplant or if it's just genetic. Everybody in my family has stomach issues type thing. And so that's been for me kind of a personal mission, is trying to find more transplant patients that are maybe 10. I've had mine for 12 and a half years now.
That's incredible. That's really good.
Yeah, and the liver's doing great. I love to say my liver's perfect. The rest of me is a little iffy. But my liver is doing absolutely perfect. I'm so blessed. And I know nothing about my organ donor. I wrote them a letter after I graduated high school to the family to thank them. But otherwise, I just know that I was blessed that they made the decision to say yes. And I don't know, is it any different in the UK? Do you know anything about your donor?
Yeah, I know the age. He was 22, and like I say, he was male. And we have the option to send a letter. So you send a letter to, I'd say, the hospital, and they're like a middle party. So if the family agree to receive a letter, the hospital can send it on. And then, I'm going to send a letter. I was going to wait until I was a year down the line. That was my plan.
That's exactly what I did. I waited a year. I graduated high school. I got accepted into college, because for me, it was to be able to say, like, to show them, like, you gave me my life back.
Yeah, that's exactly my thoughts. I thought, I mean, everyone's different, but I just thought I'd like to tell them, you know, rather than just write it whilst I'm lying in recovery, I wanted to, you know, give them the story of what I'd achieved afterwards.
And I got to say, like, your scar is freaking amazing looking for 7 months out. It looks better than mine 12 and a half years out. I had 75 staples on my scar, and so they said they would go away, and they didn't. So I have like railroad tracks across. I have the Mercedes. And so, but your scar looks, I mean, just absolutely amazing. And I actually am taking a lesson from you. I'm going to start doing more ab exercises to help stretch out my stomach muscles, because I never did that post recovery because I was a kid.
You're active enough anyway.
I'm getting there. I worked in an office until the end of last year. And really, that just the lifestyle, I don't mind working in an office, but for me, a high pace, high money driven lifestyle is just not something that I care about, because I've recognized I've been given this second chance at life, and I want to do things more for my community. And wake up every morning, take care of chickens, go and give out eggs to the whole neighborhood. And
so that's why you moved to the countryside.
Really, it really is. And it's funny, I think about the first date I went on with he was then my boyfriend, and we both were like, I just want to live in the country. He's like, oh, me too. And I was like, okay. And we got married, and we moved here a week later. And so it was literally like we did it, and the fruition, and now we're like tired, really tired. So, but you understand that.
Yeah, of course. It's a full-time job having animals, full-time. Just quickly, because we're getting towards the end of the time roughly. But did your boyfriend, did he know about your transplant before? Was this something you had to explain?
Great question, because this is something I wanted to get into more. So I met my boyfriend This is such a funny story. We were working at a Renaissance fair. He was a knight in shining armor, literally. So everybody in the cast knew about my liver transplant. So whether he knew about it when I met him, I wasn't really sure. But from day one, he wasn't. I remember telling him, and he was just like, and just eating his dinner. And he was like, and what else about you? And I was just like, I'm in love. And, I would wear a sports bra walking around after you wore a 100-pound dress all day in the heat. And my scar, and he would always just be like, God, you're beautiful. And it's what made me fall in love with him.
Yeah, and that's really nice.
He's from Ohio, which is over 1,000 miles away from here. So that's what it took for me to find a guy that great. not advocating, but it really, we didn't plan to fall in love type situation. He went back to Ohio, and it was like, please come back. And 6 years, we took our time, and 6 years later we got married. And the thing that we've talked about a lot in 6 years is whether or not we want to have kids. Especially after my niece was born, because she is the cutest thing in the whole world. And really, we've come to the decision that I don't. And part of it is the fear of passing on Wilson's disease, although I'm pretty sure I've done the genetic understanding. It's a very low chance for one parent recessive. Troy would get tested if we really ever went down that path. And for us, it's a decision of just my health had to come first. I still end up in the hospital several times a year, very, very sick, unable to keep fluids down for days at a time. And I can't put a child in that position. I don't want to. Now, not to say if I ended up with a child, we're beyond excited about that, and we'll make everything happen.
You're still very young. So
yeah, I'm 30 this
time ahead.
And we've also talked about down the line when we're much more established, adopting older children or being a foster family type situation. Yeah. For us right now, though, we're very, very happy with fur children. So
weirdly, I've thought more about adoption than I have having my own children. I don't know why.
That's something Wilson's disease did to me too. And I think for me, I would very much be interested in adopting a child with medical needs. Yeah. If I could get myself medically much in a better position, because I know that world, and I would navigate that for that child. And so I hope someday I'm going to be in a position to be able to give back or do something like that. Maybe be a medical advocate or something for people. But that because of transplant. So.
Well, thank you very much for coming along, Virginia. I just want to say, if there's any guys that are watching this, could you please get in contact if you want to come on one of the shows? Because at the moment, it's just all females. I've got one guy lined up. Some males would be great, just to get a different perspective. Thank you very much, Virginia. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll speak to you soon.
Thanks. Bye.